Hello, everyone. Wanted to share with you the most important record in my collection. It's by far not the most valuable. I think my wife paid 30 for it, something like that. It's 180 gram 2 LP set, Robert Johnson, the complete collection. The reason why this is so important is because Robert Johnson is the most influential musician of our time, of all time. With Without Robert Johnson, rock and roll wouldn't exist, heavy metal wouldn't exist, and blues as we know it wouldn't exist. A lot of things that went into country music wouldn't exist. He had a short life. He died at age 27, part of the 27 Club. There's the there's an urban legend that surrounds him and his playing ability, that he sold his soul to the devil, which of course, he didn't. He was just a really dedicated guy, a genius who wanted to learn music and went to all lengths to do it. He disappeared after not being able to play very well at all. Sunhouse and other notable blues legends who knew him personally would make fun of him and tell him to take the noise elsewhere. He disappeared, and about 6 months to a year later showed back up playing things that made their mouths hit the floor and amazed everyone around him. At one point they said that Robert was like a jukebox. You could look at him and tell him what song to play, and it would be like he's played it a million times. He'd just grab his guitar and go, or after hearing a song on the radio for the first time. They say that he'd stand on corners and have a crowd of 30 to 50 people around him at all times, and for busking back then, that's amazing. These songs he recorded 2 different recording sessions in his life, both in Texas, in a hotel room. Show you the inside cover of that. That's Robert right there. There's only a few pictures of him known, verified. That's one of them. His guitar work was ahead of its time. An amazing guitarist. Another notable thing about him was his choice of lyrical imagery. There's a lot of darkness here. There's more darkness here than a Black Sabbath album. And without this album, there would be no Sabbath and bands like that. Songs like Me and the Devil, Crossroad Blues, Hellhound on My Trail, lyrical lines like, my doorknob's turning, must be spooks around my bed. Things like that. Me and the Devil walking hand in hand. Like I said, Crossroad Blues. A lot of darkness here, and that was shocking for his time. Imagine that. A tall black man in a suit on a street corner telling you that he sold his soul to the devil, and here's a song about it, He was the first, if you want to get down to it, he was the first shock performer as far as that went. Now, Robert had reasons for why he felt that way and wrote that way, but there's also a lot of metaphor here. A lot of metaphor, like Me and the Devil walking side by side. More than likely, he's talking about a white man in a suit, a plantation owner, or the record man that came to get him to record. But there's also a lot of voodoo references and things like that. In Come On In My Kitchen, which is one of my personal favorites, he uses the line, I took the last nickel out of her nation sack, which is a voodoo term meaning to take away her sexual power over a man, over him specifically. In another song, he mentions sun's going down, which is a voodoo term, but it's also a term for sundowner towns, to where African Americans were not allowed to be after the sun went down, for obvious reasons. Robert was only one generation away from slavery. So these are times and oppressions that he lived through one generation away. So things really hadn't changed that much when Robert came along. Not that much at all. There's a lot of these songs went on to inspire bands like the Rolling Stones, which Janis Joplin. So many bands were inspired by Robert and other blues musicians that it caused a 60s rock blues revival. And that's the reason why I bring that up, is because Robert wasn't really mentioned in that, because Muddy Waters was still alive, Howlin' Wolf were still alive, and they were brought into it. But Robert, they wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Robert. Keith Richards and other, Eric Burden, a lot of others are huge Robert Johnson fans as well. There's not enough time for me to say everything that needs to be said about Robert Johnson. There's a lot of mystery surrounding his life, his death, which leads to the urban legend. On the other side of the urban legend, of course, the urban legend being that he sold his soul to the devil to gain fame and fortune, which he never got neither. And he in all actuality, he spent time with a blues guitarist named Ike Zimmerman, who apparently was a hell of a guitarist, because he taught Robert everything he knew. They used to practice in cemeteries at night so they wouldn't bother Ike Zimmerman's sleeping kids. He lived with Ike Zimmerman for that year that he was missing, and learned apparently everything the man had to teach him. Makes you want to really hear what Ike Zimmerman was laying down on that guitar, huh? Because as far as I know, no audio recordings of him ever existed. Robert recorded twice in his life, like I said, recording the same songs pretty much twice in a row. He died shortly after, age 27, in a bar or juke joint, supposedly poisoned from a jealous man whose old lady was apparently paying too much attention to Robert, and likewise his burial. There's 3 different grave sites that supposedly belong to Robert Johnson. Nothing in his life is simple. It's all shrouded in mystery, except for a few key points that we know about. I can't tell you enough how influential this album and this collection of songs really is. Like I said, without him, there'd be no modern country, no heavy metal, no rock and roll, none of it. Blues would have never evolved into what it did without this. And if you haven't heard this, I urge you to. There was no big studio tricks here, no big production or anything. This is Robert with his back to the engineer, playing into a corner with a bottle of whiskey on the floor next to him. Live, he would play with his back to the crowd too, which added to the mystery that he sold his soul and on and on. In reality, he didn't want people to see what he was doing, because when you're making a living at that point in time, playing music, things like that, it's just like any other trade that you have. You don't want the guy next to you seeing your tricks and techniques and going and doing the same thing and taking away from your income, your way of supporting yourself. Like I said, not enough that I can say about it. Just please go check it out. My favorite artist of all time, the most important artist of all time. And if you're a Robert Johnson or a blues fan, I'm into all kinds of blues. It's my favorite genre of all time. Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, Blind Willie Thornton. I got that wrong. Blind Willie McTell. So many, I can't name them all. Like I said, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Blind Willie McTell, Slim Harpo. Anyway, just a few. There's too many of them to name too. But King of the Delta Blues right here, Robert Johnson. Please check it out. Learn all you can about the man. They teach about him in college courses and such. That's how important he is. Anyway, Robert Johnson. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for listening to me ramble.